I never felt like I truly belonged in my family. That's a hard thing to admit, but I guess that's how it's always been. My name is Amelia, and I've spent most of my life living in the shadow of my older sister, Olivia. Growing up in our small house, it was always obvious who the favorite child was. Olivia could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Even when she messed up, and trust me, she messed up plenty, Mom and Dad would just smile and say, "That's our Olivia," like her mistakes were somehow charming. Me, I couldn't even breathe wrong without them noticing. "Amelia, sit up straight. Amelia, your grades could be better. Amelia, why can't you be more like your sister?" That last one was their favorite. The only person who ever made me feel valued was my grandfather, Mom's dad. Grandpa Mike was this tough old guy with the softest heart. He lived in this big house across town, and visiting him was like stepping into another world where I wasn't constantly being compared to my sister. "You remind me so much of your grandmother," he used to tell me, standing in front of this old painting in his living room. It was a portrait of some unknown woman from the 19th century, but Grandpa swore she looked just like Grandma, who died when I was 12. "And you look just like her too, Amelia. You've got that same fire in your eyes." I never saw what he was talking about, but it made me feel special. Like I belonged somewhere, even if it wasn't in my own home. Things got even more tense when Olivia dropped out of college during her 3rd year. Mom and Dad had taken out loans to pay for her education, scraping together every penny they could. But Olivia had bigger plans. She was going to start a business with her best friend, Rachel. "It's going to be huge," she kept saying. "We're going to be the next big thing." Mom and Dad just nodded along, proud of their entrepreneurial daughter. They never even mentioned the wasted tuition or the loans they were still paying off. When my 18th birthday rolled around, we had a small party at home. Nothing fancy, just family and a few neighbors. I wasn't expecting much, maybe some gift cards or clothes. That's why what happened next completely blindsided me. Grandpa Mike stood up after we cut the cake, tapping his glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice carrying across our cramped living room. "Amelia, I've watched you grow up into an incredible young woman. You work hard, you're kind, and you deserve a chance to follow your dreams." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. "I paid for your college tuition in full," he said, "all 4 years, wherever you want to go." I couldn't breathe, the room went completely silent. I opened the envelope with shaking hands, staring at the documents inside, proof that my future was secured. "Grandpa, I started, but I couldn't finish." I just threw my arms around him, tears streaming down my face. That's when Mom cleared her throat. "Dad, can we talk to you for a minute?" Her voice was tight, controlled. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it here," Grandpa replied, his arm still around my shoulders. "This is very generous," Mom said carefully, "but don't you think that money would be better spent helping Olivia with her business? She's really struggling to get things off the ground, and—" "Excuse me?" Grandpa cut her off. "This is my money, and I'll decide where to spend it." Olivia made her choice when she dropped out. Amelia deserves this chance. The look on my parents' faces, I'll never forget it. They were actually angry that I was getting an opportunity. Olivia just glared at me from across the room, her eyes burning with resentment. "Well," Dad finally said, forcing a smile, "this is quite a surprise." The rest of the party was tense, to say the least, but I didn't care. For once in my life, someone had chosen me. Someone had seen me. I applied to colleges out of state, as far from home as I could reasonably go. When August came, I packed my bags and left without looking back. I'd visit Grandpa's house during breaks, but I avoided my parents' home as much as possible. On the rare occasions I did visit, all they could talk about was Olivia's business, how it was just about to take off, how she was making connections, how success was right around the corner. Meanwhile, Olivia never missed an opportunity to mention how unfair it was that Grandpa hadn't given her money for her business. "It's his greed that's keeping me from becoming a big success," she whined over dinner one holiday break. "If I just had a little more capital." I'd just nod and count the hours until I could return to campus. At least there, I felt like I belonged. Everything changed during my third year of college. I was studying for midterms when my phone rang. It was Mom. "Amelia," she said, her voice oddly flat, "your grandfather died this morning. The funeral is on Saturday." I was numb during the entire trip home. Grandpa Mike had been the one constant in my life, the only person who seemed to see me for who I really was. And now he was gone. I managed to get emergency leave from the dean's office and booked the first bus I could. When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was strange. There was sadness, sure, but also this weird undercurrent of anticipation. My parents hugged me when I walked in, but it felt mechanical, like they were just going through the motions. Mom's eyes were dry. "How are you holding up?" I asked her. After all, she'd just lost her father. "It's hard," she replied, but her voice lacked emotion. "We're handling the arrangements. The funeral is tomorrow, and the reading of the will is scheduled for the day after." At dinner, nobody talked about Grandpa, not about his life, his stories, or what he meant to us. Instead, the conversation kept drifting to his house, his possessions, and what would happen to them now. "It's a big house for just one person," Dad commented. "Such a shame it's been sitting half empty all these years." "Grandpa liked his space," I said defensively. "Sure, but it's just practical thinking," Mom added quickly. "It's worth considering what happens next." The funeral was small and efficient. I cried through most of it, while my family remained composed. A few of Grandpa's old friends spoke, sharing stories that made me smile through my tears. But when I looked over at my family, they seemed detached, like they were just waiting for it to be over. The next day, we all gathered at the notary's office. Mr. Peterson, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, greeted us solemnly. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. "Mike was a good man and a long-time client. He updated his will just last month, actually." That caught everyone's attention. My parents exchanged glances. "Let's begin," Mr. Peterson said, opening a folder. He read through the formal legal language and then got to the distributions. "To my daughter, Susan Wilson, I leave my house and all its contents, except for the items specifically mentioned below." Mom straightened up, a smile threatening to break through her solemn expression. "To my granddaughter, Olivia Wilson, I leave the sum of $50,000, to be used for business development." Olivia's eyes widened. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something. "To my granddaughter, Amelia Wilson, I leave the 19th century painting that hangs in my living room." The room went silent, then Olivia snorted. "Seriously, she gets some old painting?" She looked at me with a mix of relief and mockery. "Grandpa left you some incomprehensible nonsense." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "There's more," he said, pulling another document from his folder. "Mike had the painting appraised shortly before his death. The appraisers estimated its value at approximately $400,000. He handed me the appraisal documents. The room fell deadly silent. I stared at the paper in disbelief. $400,000? For that old painting? I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Olivia had gone pale. Mom and Dad were staring at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Shock, certainly, but something else too, something calculating. The drive back home was painfully quiet. Once we arrived, Dad broke the silence. "We've decided to move into your grandfather's house," he announced. "It's bigger than this place, and it makes sense for us to use it rather than let it sit empty." "What about this house?" I asked. "We're selling it," Mom replied. "The money will go to Olivia to help with her business." So Olivia would get the proceeds from the house sale on top of her $50,000 inheritance. I wondered if that was enough to satisfy her, but I didn't have to wonder long. "This is so unfair," Olivia finally exploded, turning to me. "You don't deserve that painting. What do you even know about art? You should give it to the family." "It's my inheritance," I said firmly, anger bubbling up inside me. "Grandpa wanted me to have it. I'm not giving it away." I expected my parents to back Olivia up, like they always did, but to my surprise, Mom intervened. Olivia, that's enough, she said gently, there's no need to pressure your sister. The painting is Amelia's inheritance, just like the money is yours. I was shocked. Mom had never taken my side against Olivia before. It felt strange, almost suspicious. The next few days were a blur. I spent most of my time at Grandpa's house, walking through the rooms, remembering him. The painting still hung in the living room, the unknown woman looking out with eyes that, now that I really looked, did seem familiar somehow. Mom came by one afternoon, carrying boxes. She was already moving things in. "What are you planning to do with the painting?" she asked casually. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. She nodded, setting down a box. "Don't worry about it. It can stay right here, in its usual place, until you decide." Relief washed over me. At least I didn't have to figure out what to do with a valuable painting while I was still in college. A few days later, I returned to campus. Life went back to normal: classes, study groups, exams. I tried to focus on my studies, to honor Grandpa's investment in my education. Weeks passed, and the raw grief began to fade into something more manageable. Then one night, scrolling through social media, I stopped cold. There on my screen was a post from Olivia, photos of a housewarming party in what looked like a brand new apartment in the city center. The caption read, "New chapter, new place." I stared at the images in confusion. How could Olivia afford an apartment downtown? Even with the money from Grandpa and the house sale, it seemed excessive for someone whose business was supposedly struggling. I picked up my phone and called her. "Hey, congrats on the new place, it looks amazing," I said when she answered. "Why didn't you tell me about it?" "You're busy with school," she replied dismissively, "not like you could come to the housewarming anyway." "Still, it's big news, how'd you swing it? Is the business doing that well?" There was a pause. "I've got to go, Amelia, talk later." She hung up abruptly, leaving me with an uneasy feeling I couldn't quite shake. A few months passed, and summer break finally arrived. Despite my misgivings about returning home, I packed my bags and headed to what was now my parents' house, Grandpa's old place. It felt strange walking up that familiar path knowing he wouldn't be there to greet me. Mom had redecorated some rooms, but the living room remained largely untouched. The painting, my painting, still hung in its place of honor above the fireplace. I stood before it, studying the woman's face. Grandpa was right, there was something in her eyes that reminded me of old photos of my grandmother. Dinner that night was just the three of us. Dad talked about his job, Mom shared neighborhood gossip, and I gave brief updates about school. It felt almost normal, except for the elephant in the room, or rather, the apartment across town. "So," I said casually during a lull in conversation, "did you sell the old house?" Mom and Dad exchanged glances. "Yes, we did," Mom finally answered, "got a decent price for it too." "And you gave the money to Olivia for her business?" I pressed. "That's right," Dad said, focusing intently on cutting his steak. "She needed the capital to expand." I nodded, taking a sip of water. "Speaking of Olivia, her new apartment looks amazing. Downtown must be expensive." My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Well," Mom said with a tight smile, "her business is going quite well, she can afford nice things now." Something about her tone didn't sit right with me. I remembered Olivia's evasiveness on the phone, and how quickly she'd hung up when I asked about finances. "That's great," I said. "What exactly is her business doing these days?" "Oh, you know," Dad waved his hand vaguely, "entrepreneurial things, marketing consultancy, I think." She's always been the business-minded one. The conversation moved on, but my suspicions didn't fade. The next day, I called Jamie, who was Rachel's brother, the same Rachel who was supposedly running this thriving business with Olivia. "Hey Jamie, how's your summer going?" I asked after catching up a bit. "By the way, how's Rachel doing? Still working with my sister?" Jamie laughed, "If you can call it working. Those two are still playing entrepreneur, but from what Rachel tells me, they're not exactly setting the business world on fire. They just like telling everyone what big shots they are." My stomach tightened. "Really?" "Because Olivia just bought this gorgeous apartment downtown. I assumed business was booming. No way, Jamie sounded genuinely surprised. Rachel's still living in that cramped apartment with 2 roommates. She'd have mentioned if they suddenly struck gold. After we hung up, I sat on my bed, thinking. If Olivia's business wasn't doing well, where did she get the money for the apartment? The house sale and Grandpa's $50,000 might cover it, but my parents said the money from the sale of their house was used for Olivia's business. I wandered into the living room, my eyes drawn again to the painting. Something felt off about it today. I stepped closer, examining the brushstrokes, the way the light hit the canvas. It looked brighter somehow, newer. A cold feeling washed over me as I lifted the frame from the wall. I turned it over, searching for the small marks and imperfections I'd noticed when looking at it with Grandpa, a small tear in the corner of the canvas, a smudge of different colored paint on the back, the artist's faded signature. They were gone. This wasn't my painting, it was a fake. My hands trembled as I hung it back on the wall. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Olivia's new apartment. Mom's unusual support of my inheritance. Their insistence that the painting stay in its rightful place in this house. They had sold my painting, my inheritance, and used the money to buy Olivia an apartment. Then they'd replaced it with a forgery, assuming I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care enough to check. I needed proof, though, and I needed to confront them when they couldn't wiggle out of it. So I waited, planning my next move carefully. That evening, Olivia joined us for dinner. I watched my family interact, noting the meaningful glances they exchanged, the way they carefully avoided any mention of Olivia's apartment or my painting. They had no idea I knew. As we all sat down at the table, I discreetly slipped my hand into my pocket and turned on the voice recorder app on my smartphone. No one noticed as I positioned the phone on my lap, making sure it would capture our conversation clearly. With evidence secured, I was ready. I've been thinking, I said, reaching for the salt, I might sell the painting. I'm looking at places near campus, and I could use the money for a down payment. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Mom cleared her throat. Honey, that painting is a family heirloom, you shouldn't sell it. Besides, Olivia added quickly, you don't need an apartment yet. You've still got a year left in the dorms. I nodded thoughtfully, watching their reactions carefully. I've already made up my mind. Actually, I've called an appraiser to come tomorrow and verify its authenticity before I list it. Olivia suddenly pushed back from the table, her eyes filling with tears. The dam broke. Fine, I sold it. Okay, I sold your stupid painting, she cried. Mom and Dad looked at her in horror. Olivia, Dad hissed. What? She already knows. Look at her face, she knows. Olivia pointed an accusing finger at me. I needed that money for my apartment. My business is failing, and you two wouldn't help me anymore. I set down my fork, meeting her gaze steadily. So you stole from me. We didn't steal, Mom interjected, her voice taking on a soothing tone. We just reallocated family resources. Olivia needed a place to live, and you're still in college with everything paid for. This is what families do, we help each other. By committing fraud? I asked incredulously. By selling something that belongs to me without my knowledge or consent, and replacing it with a fake. Don't be so dramatic, Dad said with a dismissive wave, it's just a painting. You wouldn't even have anywhere to put it. It was my inheritance, I said, my voice low and controlled despite the rage building inside me. The one thing Grandpa wanted me to have. Well, what's done is done, Mom said with finality. These are family matters, Amelia. Family helps family, don't be selfish. I stood up from the table, my appetite gone. I want my painting back. That's enough. Mom stood up, her face flushed with anger. I think you need to leave this house and think about your behavior. When you're ready to understand the value of family relations, you can come back. Kick her out, Olivia urged. She's threatening us over a stupid painting. She doesn't deserve to be here. I looked at each of their faces, hardly recognizing these people who were supposed to love me. Without another word, I went upstairs, packed my things, and left. I only turned off the voice recorder once I was safely outside, making sure I had captured every incriminating word. I checked into a hostel, my mind racing. What should I do now? My phone kept buzzing with calls and messages from my parents and Olivia, but I ignored them all. Instead, I called the police and explained the situation. My inheritance had been stolen, replaced with a forgery, and used to purchase an apartment for my sister. The officer on the phone was sympathetic but cautious. "This sounds like it could be a civil matter, ma'am, but we'll look into it. Can you come to the station tomorrow morning?" That night, I barely slept. By morning, my phone was flooded with increasingly angry messages from my family, accusing me of setting the police on them and being a selfish brat. Around noon, I received a call from the police station asking me to come in. When I arrived, my parents and Olivia were already there, looking both furious and frightened. They immediately started talking over each other as soon as they saw me. "She's lying, this is a family dispute, the painting was always meant to be shared." "Enough," the detective in charge said firmly. "Miss Wilson, your family claims you fabricated this entire story. They say you created the forgery yourself and are now trying to frame them." I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. Of course they would turn this around on me. "That's absurd," I said, reaching for my phone, "I have proof." I played the recording from dinner, their voices crystal clear as they admitted to selling my painting and replacing it with a fake. The room fell silent as their confession played out for the detective. Olivia's face had gone white, Mom was staring at the floor, and Dad couldn't seem to look at anyone. "I also have all the documentation for the painting," I continued, pulling papers from my bag, including the certificate of authenticity and the appraisal documents. "I'm willing to have the painting in their house examined by experts to prove it's a forgery." The detective nodded, taking notes. "This changes things." My parents and sister started pleading with me not to press charges, but I stood firm. "I want to file a formal complaint," I told the detective. "And I want my painting back." What followed was a whirlwind of police reports, investigations, and legal proceedings. The police located the buyer of my painting, a wealthy collector who thought he was making a legitimate purchase. The painting was seized as evidence, and a team of art experts confirmed it was indeed the original worth $400,000. Meanwhile, Olivia was forced to sell her apartment to repay the buyer. She cooperated with the investigation, admitting her role in the scheme and providing details about how she'd arranged for the forgery. The court recognized her cooperation and the fact that she had made restitution, so she received a suspended sentence rather than jail time. She was also ordered to pay me $100,000 in damages for emotional distress, money she had to borrow from our parents, who had already spent most of their savings helping her business. Throughout the process, my parents maintained that they had only done what was best for the family. They told everyone who would listen that I had betrayed them by going to the police, that I had set cops on my own family over just a painting. They never once acknowledged that they had stolen from me, lied to me, and tried to gaslight me when confronted. "You're no longer our daughter," Mom told me outside the courthouse after the final hearing. "We don't want to see you again." It hurt, but less than I expected. The truth was, they had never really seen me at all. Once everything was settled, I received my painting back. It was even more beautiful than I remembered, the unknown woman's eyes seeming to hold a new wisdom now. I placed it in a secure bank vault for safekeeping until I could properly care for it myself. That was 6 months ago. I'm in my final year of college now, still focused on getting my degree and honoring Grandpa's faith in me. I haven't spoken to my parents or Olivia since the trial. According to mutual acquaintances, Olivia moved back in with our parents after losing her apartment. They tell people dramatic stories about their ungrateful younger daughter who tore the family apart. After graduation, I plan to find a good job and eventually buy my own place. When I do, I'll hang Grandpa's painting in the most prominent spot, not because of its monetary value, but because it represents the one person who always believed I deserved a fair chance. As for my family, I don't know if we'll ever reconcile. Some wounds cut too deep to heal easily. But I do know that I did the right thing by standing up for myself. Family should support each other, yes, but not by sacrificing one member for another's benefit. Not by stealing, lying, and manipulating. Maybe someday they'll understand that. Until then, I'll keep moving forward, building my own life, framing my own future, with or without them. The painting watches over me from its temporary home in the vault, the woman's knowing eyes seeming to say, "Well done."